What I've made here is a visual representation of the isolation and segregation of the Bronx from the rest of New York. This was a pivotal message that Jonathan Kozol conveyed in his book Amazing Grace. Many of his interviewers talked of the entrapment they feel on an everyday basis. They feel cut off and as if they don't matter in this garage that the upper class and conservative politicians force them into. Residents have been crammed so deep into this garage that they can no longer see any light at the end of the tunnel, and more crap keeps getting piled on top of them, making it virtually impossible to find one's way to liberation. To illustrate this idea of the upper class storing away the lower class forever, I have chosen to draw your typical suburban garage. This garage is connected to a relatively nice-looking home with some posh decorations. It has a brick chimney and is capable of fitting 2 cars, a now essential need for the types of families that live in these homes. On the outside, it's bleak and empty, but as the garage door lifts, you get a look at everything these people have pushed upon the lower class in order to have their neighborhoods free of anything they don't want to see. Inside their garage is a hopeless girl being crushed by the weight of the disadvantages she was born into, living in the Bronx. She has asthma that is made worse by the trash incinerator that is vomiting harmful chemicals into the air of the Bronx. She cannot afford to go to the hospital as it is a horribly rancid place where you are more likely to contract a new infection before being treated by a doctor. She has to care for a parent that has contracted AIDS even though there is no history of drug use. She is living in a horrible community called Mott Haven and is always in fear of when the government will turn off her electricity or how she will stay warm in the cold, harsh winters. She's also forced to go to a public school with the worst test scores in all of New York. No matter how hard she tries, every step will be an uphill battle. The upper class did not want gangs and drug violence to terrorize their perfect lives, which is fair enough as I'm sure no one wants to be living in a crime-filled area. So, what they did over many years is they concentrated all of these bad things into one area. This is done by masterful and deceitful politicians who purposely advocate for projects like low-cost housing to all be constructed in the same area. They treated the lower class like you treat a dirty floor. They took all the dispersed poor individuals and swept them together, which sure, it got rid of a lot of the danger, but it forever changed the ways in which the classes interacted with each other through society. What was created was the poor and dreary side of town and the rich and extravagant at the crossing of 96th Street. No one from the wealthy side of town no longer cared or interacted with anyone except others in their class. The media has greatly contributed to this divide, as the media only portrays people living in the Bronx as an inconvenience and an irritation, says Mancios on page 563 of the textbook. The media never includes acts of kindness or success stories focusing on people in the Bronx. This creates the perception that there aren't any gifted minds or nice souls in the Bronx, forcing people to assume they are all drug-slanging, murdering types of people. This created a great divide and a forgotten society full of bright and misunderstood people. They are misunderstood on the basis of where they come from, purely on their socioeconomic status. When you mention the Bronx, people automatically think of the beaten-down living conditions and the high murder rate. But they have no clue what life in the Bronx is actually like. The upper class lacks the empathy for humankind and assumes that the lower class has brought it upon themselves by living in these conditions. All the while, the elite are living in clean and pristine neighborhoods. This creates a concept of permanent inequality, shown on page 93 in the textbook, as the superiors having no notion that they are present primarily to help inferiors, to impart them their advantages. Basically saying, superiors don't give a damn about the inferiors, and they will show zero effort towards giving them any advantage or help. That is why the inequality they face is permanent. The inequality is laid upon them at birth. They have no control over their destiny. Like page 199 in Kozol mentions, the babies born on the 5th floor were all white, They came into a world with colorful walls, plants, and individual doctors and rooms. The next floor down is a much different story. The babies were all people of color, and they came into a world with walls full of peeling wallpaper and dirty rooms that are shared by 4 other people giving birth simultaneously. The proportion of doctors outside the Bronx is 60 to 1,000. Once you step over the threshold that is 96th Street, that number plummets to 2 doctors for every 1,000 people. That is why people living in impoverished areas become frustrated with medical facilities. They have to wait to be seen just to be rushed through an exam in order to get to the next person. This makes people not even go see the doctor when they are sick, which leads to a great deal of health issues. Rates of HIV and AIDS and asthma are way higher in the Bronx than any place else. There is no direct solution to fix this issue. It has been embedded deep into our societal structure. The first step is to trying to bring people out of the Bronx, is to shine some light on the positive aspects of the Bronx community. This would hopefully cause some upper-class members to try and change the permanent inequality into a more temporary inequality by treating them as another member of the human race, instead of someone as part of the society they fear and try to avoid every day.